Hello, everyone, and welcome to Airbnb Host Open 2015. Yeah. Wow. I can't tell you how exciting it is to look out at this unbelievable crowd. I just wanted to start by thanking everyone for all that you do, because there would be no Airbnb, there would be none of this without all of you. So thank you. As Brian said, I'm the Chief Business Affairs and Legal Officer for Airbnb, and it's been my privilege to have been part of the team for the past 4 years. And as you can imagine, over that time, there have been so many incredible experiences as we've grown. But for me, there's one in particular that stands out, and so I wanted to share that with you today. It was when I first started at Airbnb, so I was really just learning about who our community is and the potential of home sharing. And then I attended a hearing in San Francisco on short-term rentals and tax policy. And normally, municipal government hearings are probably not the thing that you think of as being the most interesting. But as soon as I walked in, I could tell that this hearing was different. There was this energy and this buzz in the air. The room was so crowded with people that they had to open this overflow area just to accommodate everyone who was waiting for hours for their turn to speak at the podium. And I heard story after story of the people in our community. A disabled host who testified that while he was struggling to find a job, he was able to start a small business out of his home because of Airbnb. A retiree who explained that thanks to the new guests that he met every day, he had found a renewed sense of purpose. And a young mom who waited there with her 2 young toddlers to be able to explain that the extra income that she was earning was literally changing their lives. And all the while, I sat there watching this unfold and listening to every host come up and say their piece, an entire courtroom full of people spontaneously standing up for something that was changing their lives and changing their communities for the better. And now keep in mind, this was almost 4 years ago, so we didn't have a mobilization team like we have today, and we certainly didn't tell anyone what to say. This was just an organic expression of how people felt about something that had become an essential and sometimes defining part of their lives. And realizing that as part of my job, I had the opportunity to work and help all of these people was a really special moment for me. I remember calling my husband and going, I cannot wait to tell you about this day. But looking back, I realized just how ordinary that day was. And I mean ordinary in the most positive way, because today, meetings like that are happening all the time. Right now, there's a host somewhere deciding to tell his or her story, and in many cases, there's a local leader or politician who is just about to learn that there's so much more to home sharing than they ever imagined. And over the last few years, I've watched this simple but effective model of pushing for change spread all over the world. And at this point, there's a pattern. Wherever you live, there will always be people that start out skeptical or confused about home sharing. Why would anyone want to stay with a stranger? What about the neighbors? Is it safe? But then they hear from hosts like you, people passionate enough to take the time to showcase the power of this community. And then there's this moment where a light just goes on and they finally get it. And when you multiply that moment, it turns into a movement. And that's one of the reasons we're all here today. We want to make sure that home sharing continues to thrive and grow. And while Airbnb has close to 100 public policy experts and mobilizers all over the world supporting you every step of the way, ultimately, it's the stories that you tell and the actions that you take that make all the difference to policymakers. And that's why you're really the most important part of this movement. And together, we're working towards a new reality, a day where home sharing is embraced by every city on the planet. Yes, I love that. So going forward, we want to ensure that we continue to work with policymakers, not against them. We've already seen how it's possible to collaborate with civil leaders to come up with fair and smart rules for home sharing that work for every community. And that's because in nearly every case, once we highlight the benefits of home sharing, policymakers want to work with us to establish the right kinds of rules. The Airbnb community is about dialogue, not disruption. And once your neighbors and local officials meet you and hear your stories, they start to understand why home sharing is fundamentally good for cities and good for society. I think the first thing people understand are the economic benefits. And our team is working, I think we're behind a slide. And our team is working to collect, analyze, and share the economic impacts of home sharing in cities around the world to help strengthen this argument. And we just released a study, in fact, in London that showed that this Airbnb community generated 1.8 billion euros in 1 year alone. 1.8 billion euros. It's incredible. So, as we all know, people in many cities are understandably worried about the rising costs of housing, especially since over the past several years, many household incomes have remained flat. But now, more and more people are seeing that hosting on Airbnb can be an important part of the solution. The extra income that hosts earn help pay the rent, pay the mortgage, help hosts start new businesses or travel the world. And increasingly, many of you are taking matters into your own hands and telling other people how important this is to you. Like Rosa Sanchez, a host in Barcelona. Yeah. Rosa, she's here. 8 years ago, Rosa lost her husband, and shortly after that, she also lost her job. And as the bills were piling up, her daughters talked her in to putting her rooms on Airbnb. And since then, she's welcomed friends from Tasmania, Taiwan, Korea, all over the world. And she tells us that she loves introducing travelers to the real Barcelona, where she spent her whole life and now can afford to stay. And that newfound economic freedom is why Rosa has become one of our staunchest advocates in the city. She's become active in the local home sharing association, she's leading online petitions, and she's lending her voice to rallies across the city. It's why Belinda Johnson in South Los Angeles, who was able to afford to stay at home and care for her husband, has become one of our most active hosts, writing letters and op-eds and speaking out at every opportunity. And many of you have experienced benefits that go far beyond everyday financial concerns. For many of our hosts, sharing their home gives them a whole new lifestyle that they never imagined. But home sharing doesn't only benefit hosts. It's also good for cities and everyone who lives there. We already know that home sharing helps spread tourism spending to small businesses who are located in parts of the city that are outside the typical hotel districts, kind of off the beaten path, who have never historically benefited from the tourist economy. But now, thanks to you, these small family businesses, local mom and pops, are seeing this new growth that they've never experienced before. In fact, the hearing I mentioned in San Francisco, it wasn't only hosts that showed up, but local small businesses came to testify about how home sharing in their neighborhood has helped their business. And those aren't the only benefits. Time and again, this community has shown the willingness to go the extra mile to help those in need. In 2012, when Hurricane Sandy hit New York, hosts opened their doors to displaced neighbors and relief workers. And since then, our hosts have volunteered their homes during the floods in Croatia, the fires in San Diego, and the earthquake in Nepal. And that's just a few. Right now, there are relief workers staying in Airbnb listings throughout. Yeah, I know. It's awesome. Relief workers are staying in Airbnb listings throughout Serbia, Greece, and Macedonia to provide vital support to the refugees. And through our Open Homes program, so many of you are offering to help travelers with all kinds of needs stay for free. In Boise, Idaho, Maddie and her partner just recently renovated their home, and they decided to take a little of an unusual direction and turn it into a respite for out-of-town guests traveling to receive local medical treatment. And Maddie tells us that even though she meets people as patients, they depart as lifelong friends. This is awesome. And those are just a few of the ways that our hosts are providing so much more than just a room. And in every case, these stories help show the rest of the world the power of this community, and that is how change will keep coming. From the community leader who hosted a phone bank from his living room, to those of you who are holding meetups with policymakers in your homes, you're influencing the outcomes of the decisions that matter most. Now, I know this takes time, and it's a commitment, but I'm here to tell you that the work is paying off. Just last week, voters in San Francisco, that's awesome. Just last week, voters in San Francisco defeated a ballot measure that would have severely restricted home sharing in our own hometown. And listen to this is crazy. Our community made 287,000 phone calls, knocked on 285,000 doors, and together that resulted in 106 live conversations. That is incredible, and it made an enormous difference. And we've been celebrating victories like that all over the world. In cities on 6 continents, you're acting as advocates and ambassadors, speaking out, winning hearts, and changing minds. As a result, in places like the UK, Portugal, Milan, Amsterdam, Nashville, San Jose, Philadelphia, your actions have directly led to legislation that will ensure that home sharing is here to stay. And right here, thanks to your work partnering with our team in Paris, home sharing in France is accepted, and today travelers can experience this beautiful city like a local. And as I said, I know it's a commitment and it's not always easy, and on this journey we're all on together, there are always going to be bumps in the road, and that's why I'm here to tell you that we're always going to be there for you. And with that in mind, I wanted to introduce you to Chris Lehane, who is our new head of public policy. We're continuing to build a world-class team of talent to support you. And Chris is someone that you're all going to be able to count on as having in your corner. And I'm going to bring Chris on stage in a moment to make a couple of exciting announcements. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about Chris. Chris has a long track record of success in government, on campaigns, and in the business world. He was in the Clinton White House, where he worked on a variety of issues, including international initiatives. He's represented companies, done campaigns, and represented nonprofits throughout Europe, Latin America, and Asia. He's an incredible political strategist, and he's never more at home than when he's on a campaign. He's seen it all, and he knows how to win, and he is now leading our efforts to persuade decision makers, mobilize new allies, and continue to build on this movement that you all have created. So please join me in welcoming Chris Lehane to the stage.
Awesome. That was great.
I don't know if you're clicking.
Thank you. Isn't Belinda fantastic? We are so blessed to have her. She is so passionate about the mission, so wise, and so committed to all of you. I also want to thank the founders, Brian, Joe, Nate. Thanks for inviting me to participate in this journey. And I have to say, I'm so incredibly impressed by how every decision that they make is based on values and principles. You heard Brian talking about that. And I want to thank all of you for being here. It's great to see this type of energy in this audience. It's unbelievable and it's fantastic. You know, Belinda touched on San Francisco. There were a number of firsts that took place over the course of that campaign. It was the first time the actual people had a chance to vote on home sharing. It was the first time that we saw home sharing political clubs, and they were the heart and soul and center of the campaign. Belinda talked about the results. But it was also the first time that our hosts were on the ballot. Everyone here, by extension, all of you were on the ballot, and you won decisively. You won because you adhered to that old African proverb of voting with your feet, right? You look at the results of the 138,000 people who are part of the Airbnb community in San Francisco. By a percentage, they greatly outvoted the rest of the voters who are not part of the Airbnb community in San Francisco. And what happened? We won by double digits. We carried every district in the city, and we sent a global message that not only are you a community, but you are a movement. You know, Airbnb was started as a people-to-people home sharing network. And at least from my perspective, as it has evolved, it has also become a people-for-people power sharing network. For the people, by the people, and of the people. And as Belinda touched on, right, we're going to have more fights, and we're going to have more battles in the days and months and years to come. But when this community is empowered to be a movement, it cannot be beat. That is clear for all to see. Now, sort of informed by the San Francisco experience, last week we announced that we wanted to work with the community to create 100 home sharing clubs globally over the course of 2016. These will be the centers of where we really engage in our public policy activity. Now, for these to work and to be as successful as we think they can be, there's really three elements: organize, mobilize, and legitimize. So let me take each one in kind. Organize. These clubs have to be led by you, built by you, made up of you. We will certainly do our part to help provide an infrastructure and expertise, but these are your clubs. Secondly, mobilize, right? Belinda talked about how effective the various hosts can be as messengers. We want to take these organizations and make sure they're mobilized and communicating to those elected officials, those regulators, those decision makers. And so we'll help provide the advocacy tools, the communication tools, the digital platform, but it's going to be your voice that carries the day. The third piece is legitimize. At the end of the day, what we really want to have in place are agreements that allow you to continue to be able to have the right to share your home. Brian touched on our commitments. We're going to seek to work with cities to be able to put in place partnerships that will allow for the types of progressive laws that will allow you to continue to do what you do so well. Let me take a big step back. As we think about where we are today, I'm reminded of some words that Brian has said, and Brian was actually paraphrasing Victor Hugo, so it's appropriate that we're here in Paris. That home sharing is a big idea, so big that no army could ever really stop it. Right? You are on the side of history. And as we go forward and think about this, I want you to know that we understand that we're all in this together. You are us, we are you. And as we go forward and work together, our mantra will be early to bed, early to rise, and work like hell and organize. Thank you very much. I look forward to working with everyone.